This story was sent in by someone named Caleb, and it happened in October of 2022 when he went camping with his cousin Logan in a remote forest about 2 hours outside the city. It wasn't an official campsite, just a small clearing surrounded by thick trees and a dirt road that barely anyone used. They didn't see another car the entire drive there. By the time they set up their tent, it was already dark. The trees blocked most of the sky, and once their small campfire burned out, the forest felt completely sealed off from the world. Around 12:40 a.m., as they were trying to sleep, Caleb heard a whistle. It was soft and slow, like someone casually passing time. He assumed it was a bird and didn't mention it. A few minutes later, it came again. This time, Logan heard it too. They both stayed quiet, listening carefully. Logan whispered that it was probably just the wind moving through the trees. Then it happened again, but from a different direction. Now it sounded like it was somewhere behind the tent. Logan grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside, slowly scanning the trees. The beam caught nothing but trunks and darkness, no movement, no sound. He called out once, but there was no reply. Eventually, he got back inside. Over the next hour, the whistling continued every 10 or 15 minutes, each time from a new position. It didn't feel random. It felt like someone was circling them. Around 3 a.m., Caleb suddenly woke up to complete silence. No insects, no wind, nothing. Then he heard footsteps, slow and careful, stopping right beside his side of the tent. Neither of them moved. Then the whistle came again, but this time it wasn't distant. It was right behind the thin fabric wall, close enough to hear the breath behind it. Something lightly dragged across the tent, and the fabric pushed inward slightly, like someone leaning against it. The footsteps slowly moved around the tent, one full circle, then another, before everything went silent again. They didn't sleep after that. As soon as the sky began to lighten, they packed up quickly. When they stepped outside, they saw barefoot footprints circling the tent over and over. But something was wrong. The footprints were facing backward, as if whatever made them had been walking in reverse. Then Logan noticed something worse. There was only one set of shoe prints leaving the campsite, not two. Logan looked at him in confusion. Logan's sleeping bag was still inside the tent. His phone was still there, but Logan was gone. Caleb swears Logan had been standing next to him just seconds earlier. Police searched the area for days. There were no tracks leading away and no signs of a struggle. A week later, Caleb received a voicemail from Logan's number. It was 7 seconds long. There was no voice, just a slow, steady whistle. And at the very end, faint but clear, Caleb could hear footsteps circling. Last summer, 4 friends decided to camp near a quiet lake a few hours outside the city. The place wasn't popular, which was exactly why they chose it. No cabins, no rangers nearby, barely any signal once you drove far enough down the dirt road. The group consisted of Aaron, Chris, Mason, and Luke. They arrived just before sunset and found a flat area close to the water. The lake was strangely still. No boats, no fish jumping, not even insects hovering above the surface. They set up 2 tents. Aaron and Chris shared one. Mason and Luke took the other. Around midnight, the fire was out, and the forest became unnaturally quiet. At 1:12 a.m., Aaron woke up to the sound of footsteps outside the tent. Slow, careful. He assumed it was Mason, but the footsteps stopped right beside their tent. Then he heard breathing, and then a whisper. Aaron. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't loud. It sounded calm. He froze. He nudged Chris awake. Before Chris could speak, the whisper came again, this time from the direction of the lake. Aaron slowly unzipped the tent and shined his flashlight outside. The campsite was empty. The second tent was zipped shut. He walked over and opened it. Empty. Sleeping bags still inside, phones still there, backpacks untouched. They hadn't packed. They hadn't run. It looked like they had simply stepped out for a second. That's when Chris pointed toward the shore. Wet footprints. 2 sets, barefoot, leading toward the lake. They followed the prints with their flashlights shaking. The footprints went straight into the water, but they didn't come back out. The surface of the lake was perfectly still. Aaron shouted their names. No response. Police searched for days. Divers went down into the lake. They found nothing. No bodies, no signs of drowning. A week later, Mason and Luke were found walking along a highway nearly 20 kilometers away, barefoot, disoriented, silent. When questioned, both told the exact same story. They said they heard someone whisper their names from outside the tent. They thought it was Aaron playing a joke. When they stepped outside, they saw a tall figure standing at the edge of the lake, facing the water, whistling. They said the figure slowly turned toward them, and that's when they realized something was wrong. It wasn't a stranger. It was Aaron, standing by the lake, smiling. But Aaron had been asleep in his tent the entire time. Mason said the thing wearing Aaron's face tilted its head unnaturally and began walking backward into the lake, still smiling, still whistling. That was the last thing they remembered. Police later checked Aaron's phone. At exactly 1:17 a.m., a front camera photo had been taken. No one remembers taking it. The photo showed the inside of Aaron's tent, Chris asleep beside him, and Aaron lying there, eyes closed, but in the dark space behind them, just outside the unzipped flap, another face, identical to Aaron's, smiling directly into the camera, standing at the edge of the lake. It was mid-September when Tyler, Jenna, and Marcus decided to go camping deep in the northern woods. They were all experienced hikers and had done weekend trips before, but this time they wanted something more remote, somewhere with no trails, no marked campsites, just untouched forest. It was the kind of place where people rarely ventured, and that was exactly what made it exciting. They arrived in the afternoon, after a long drive through winding dirt roads. The forest was dense with tall pine and oak trees, forming a near impenetrable wall along either side of the narrow road. Birds were quiet, and the only sound was the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Eventually, they found a small clearing that would serve as their campsite. The ground was uneven but flat enough for 2 tents, and a small stream ran just a few feet away, the water moving quietly over smooth stones. They set up quickly. Tyler took charge of building a fire pit, while Marcus and Jenna arranged the tents and gathered wood. By the time they finished, the sun was dipping below the horizon, leaving long shadows stretching across the clearing. The lake nearby reflected the fading light like black glass, and the forest seemed to close in around them. After dinner, they sat around the fire, joking and telling stories as the smoke curled up into the night sky. The air grew colder and heavier as darkness settled. By 11 p.m., the fire had burned down to glowing embers. Jenna suggested they get some sleep, but Marcus, ever curious, wanted to explore the forest just a little before bed. Tyler reluctantly agreed, grabbing a flashlight, and the 3 of them set off along a narrow path that led away from the clearing. The further they went, the quieter the forest became. Not just quiet, unnaturally quiet. No rustling of animals, no sound of the stream, even the wind seemed to vanish. They stopped suddenly when they noticed faint footprints on the soft forest floor. They weren't fresh, but they were odd, too long, too narrow, barefoot prints leading deeper into the trees. "Probably someone else camping here earlier," Marcus said, trying to sound casual. But the truth was, none of them had seen another person for hours, and the prints didn't match any boots they had brought. They followed the trail a short distance until they came across a large moss-covered rock. Something about it felt wrong. Jenna said she felt like they were being watched. Tyler laughed it off, but even he felt the sudden tightness in his chest. They turned back to return to the campsite, but the path they had come on now looked unfamiliar. The trees seemed to have shifted, or maybe they had. The trail twisted strangely, and branches reached out like skeletal fingers. A low whistle echoed through the trees, not musical, not playful, but slow and deliberate. It wasn't far, it wasn't near, it was all around them. They ran. For what felt like minutes, though it could have been hours, they stumbled through the dense forest, trying to retrace their steps. Every time they slowed to catch their breath, the whistle would return, closer, sometimes behind, sometimes to the side, as if the sound itself were moving through the trees. Finally, they burst out into a small clearing. Their campsite should have been just ahead, but instead they found nothing. No fire pit, no tents. The stream was gone, replaced by thick mud and dense ferns. It was as if the forest had swallowed the place whole. "We're lost," Jenna whispered, panic finally creeping into her voice. Marcus shined the flashlight around. That's when they saw it. Barely visible in the fog, just at the edge of the trees, was a figure. Tall, thin, motionless, its face hidden in shadow. "Hello?" Tyler called, trying to sound brave. The figure didn't move. The whistle came again, and this time it was accompanied by something else, a dragging sound, like claws or maybe hands scraping along the earth. The figure moved then, slowly, deliberately, taking a single step closer. They ran again, crashing through underbrush, falling into mud, barely keeping up. Behind them, the whistle followed, steady, unwavering, as if it were attached to their own heartbeat. Eventually, they reached a road, a dirt road, winding like the one they had driven on earlier. Relief washed over them, though tempered by the persistent feeling that they were not alone. As they emerged onto the road, the figure was gone. Only footprints remained in the mud, barefoot, impossibly long, leading straight back into the forest. They drove in silence until the first hint of dawn broke through the trees. The forest seemed normal again, serene even, as though nothing had happened. They returned home, shaken but relieved. That night, Tyler couldn't sleep. He kept imagining the figure, the dragging, the slow whistle. Around 2 a.m., he heard a soft knock on the window of his room. Heart racing, he looked outside. Nothing, just the darkness. Then his phone buzzed, a notification from the group chat. Tyler opened it. It was only 3 seconds long. The camera was shaking, then the flashlight beam revealed the clearing they had camped in, the tents, the fire pit, everything normal, until the camera panned slightly to the tree line. A tall, thin figure was standing there, motionless, and in the faint light, its face was Tyler's. Not his reflection, not a mask, his face, smiling, watching, waiting. The whistle started again, soft, slow, deliberate. Tyler dropped the phone. The sound seemed to echo inside his own skull. From that night on, he swore he could hear it, that slow whistle creeping from the edge of the forest, always the same tempo as his heartbeat. And sometimes, just at the edge of his vision, he could see the figure again, standing, waiting, smiling, and he knew deep down that it was only a matter of time before it came for him, just like it had with the forest.